Over the weekend, a headline caught my attention. Fired for reporting the truth, subtitled Simply Tweeting Video of a Muslim Student Characterizing His Religion on an Interfaith Panel Cost Me My Job. An article by Andy Ngo, whose name I probably did not pronounce correctly, sorry Andy, as published in the National Review. After so much time on the internet, I've been conditioned not to accept grandiose claims like this at face value. Last week, I talked about the bunk claim that an activist was convicted of a crime just for laughing at Jeff Sessions. There was the story of the guy who claimed to have been kicked off a Delta flight just for speaking Arabic, not true. And of course, my favorite, Moldy Locks, telling Snopes she was punched in the face just for cleaning up trash. Yes, it turns out she was just a humble janitor caught in the crossfire. And hey, we've all been there, right? Stories that fit the format of this just for that are often oversimplified and fail to mention key details. But after looking into this one, I think we have an exception to the rule. Our author Andy is now the former multimedia editor at the Vanguard, the student newspaper at Portland State University. Andy attended a recent interfaith panel discussion on campus titled Unpacking Misconceptions. Andy notes much of the discussion was uncontroversial. A Hindu student criticized Reza Islam for eating part of a human brain as part of allegedly Hindu culture. That was a thing that really happened. A Jewish student said most Jews don't have the side hair curls. An atheist student talked about how we form a moral framework without religion. And then came the turn for the Islamic representative on the panel, who was asked by an audience member about a Quranic verse permitting the killing of non-Muslims. And it was at that point that our guy Andy took out his phone and started recording.
And some of these that you're referring to, like killing non-Muslims, that is only considered a crime when the country's law, the country is based on Quranic law. That means there is no other law than the Quran. So in that case, you're giving the liberty to like leave the country. You can go on a different country. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. So you can go on a different country, but in a Muslim country, a country based on the Quranic laws, disbelieving or being an infidel is not allowed, so you will be given the choice.
The title of this discussion is Unpacking Misperceptions. The premise is refuting myths about different faiths. And the Islamic representative says, religion of peace? Let me unpack that misperception for you once and for all. Under Islamic law, you will convert or you will die. But hey, if we're feeling nice, you can get the hell out. Maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but it's important to note Andy did not. He simply presented the footage and said at the panel, the Muslim student speaker said that apostates will be killed or banished in an Islamic state. Factually true, without opinion or editorializing. But as the clickbait says, you won't believe what happens next. According to Andy, 4 days later, the editor-in-chief of the paper requested a meeting with him, which he granted. Apparently, Breitbart had picked up the video he posted on Twitter, not appreciated by the editor, who called Andy predatory and reckless for putting the life and well-being of the Muslim student at risk. The editor said he violated the paper's ethical standards by not minimizing harm toward the speaker. The editor then asked for his resignation, citing his affiliation with conservative media, which she said was toxic to the reputation of the paper. But that's according to Andy. As I said, this just for that is a claim about which I am skeptical. Did Andy omit key details? Is there something he's not disclosing that helps us better understand the editor's decision? The editor-in-chief of the paper has since issued her response, and based on what she writes, I am confident that Andy is not misrepresenting. If the editor had a clear-cut reason to explain Andy's termination, she's the editor of a paper. I doubt she'd bury the lead. In this case, there is no lead to bury, though. Just a series of confused petty points that don't adequately explain why Andy was fired at all, doing more harm to the paper's credibility than good. The editor begins by addressing some of Andy's points. No, it wasn't the controversial nature of the video Andy shared. This paper doesn't shy away from uncomfortable issues for the sake of political correctness. No, he wasn't fired because Breitbart picked up the story. What Breitbart publishes is not within Andy's control. The problem, according to the editor, is that Andy shared the video clip in a standalone way, summarizing the speaker's point in a dangerously oversimplified way that violated ethics standards as established by the Society of Professional Journalists. There was no attempt to clarify directly with the speaker the intent of the words in the video, which were explanatory and in response to a question. Given the way the clip was shared without the necessary context, this was interpreted, shared, and touted as an endorsement of murder or banishment of apostates, while no such endorsement existed. Really? First off, Andy wasn't even at this event in an official reporting role for the paper. His tweet was not formal reporting. He was there as a guy. He was there as Andy, spending his own free time tweeting what he saw at a public event. I don't think strict ethical standards should apply to a guy tweeting on his own recreational time. But maybe you think they should. He is a journalist after all. If he tweets reckless things or defames people, that reflects poorly upon him as a professional, and of course upon the newspaper generally. So let's grant that perspective and consider some of the other reasons. What about Andy's tweet implies the speaker endorsed death or banishment for apostasy any more than the speaker himself implied it? All Andy's tweet says is, hey, I just watched a guy say this. Check it out. Did the speaker endorse the idea, or was he just explaining what exists globally? Andy's tweet didn't tell us, and neither did the speaker himself. And to this point on context, simply saying that something is taken out of context is not sufficient to demonstrate unethical or dishonest portrayal. Every edited clip you've ever seen on the news is unethical by this standard. You need to provide the context in which the speaker's comments fit that changes the meaning of what he said to demonstrate an ethics breach. And if you cannot, we have no reason to suppose that Andy's presentation of the speaker's words is a distortion of the speaker's intent. But maybe there's more to the story beyond this particular instance. Maybe Andy has a record of unethical behavior. And this instance, while not seemingly reckless, is part of a pattern of reckless action. And that's where it gets confusing, because the editor offers us conflicting statements. At the start of her article, the editor writes that Andy has previously produced accurate, quality journalism that includes full context, accurate quotes, and nuanced investigation. And at the end, she praises the well-balanced work he produced on a variety of complex and difficult topics while working with the Vanguard. But in between those statements, she writes the decision to remove Andy from his position was the result of ongoing breaches in trust and actions that were counterintuitive to the mission and editorial expectations at the Vanguard. So which was it? Consistently good work overall? Or a pattern of fireable offenses? Or was it both? Was it half Pulitzer worthy, half fake news? Either Andy or the editor is inconsistent. But what I have seen from Andy is coherent and easy to follow. Aside from all these nitpicky points of dispute, I'm a big believer in truth as a defense. That's what bugs me about this situation, is there are no real liars, at least until the point that Andy got fired. And to the rest of us, that meeting is just a case of he said, she said. Andy didn't lie about what the guy said. And by the way, what the guy said wasn't a lie either. 16 majority Muslim countries criminalize leaving the faith. In at least 10 of them, apostasy is punishable by death. But according to the Vanguard, oh, what an irresponsible and hasty oversimplification of the truth. That is not an oversimplification. And if you want to claim that statement lacks context or nuance, you need to explain to this simpleton and every other how it lacks context or nuance. Otherwise, you're just beaming up a big virtue signal cloaked in meaningless academic buzzwords. But nothing could be more ironic, more loaded with projection, more condescendingly and perfectly smug, lacking any self-awareness whatsoever, than the editor's closing line. As a leader and colleague, I hope an experience like this will result in learning and growth, not serve to vindicate or validate a misleading narrative. Okay? The only person here pushing a misleading narrative is you, Miss Editor. The only person scrambling to protect a preconception is you. The only person unwilling to call a spade for ideological reasons is you. And I would argue the only person behaving unethically is you. You have fired and attempted to damage the reputation of an honest guy who did nothing wrong. We can agree in hoping Andy is off to bigger and better things. But based off what I've seen from your rock bottom publication, we don't have to hope. The only direction he can go is up. Enjoy your rise, Andy. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below and especially over on Twitter. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to come hang out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it.